a Heroes Welcome podcast. Welcome, listeners. Welcome back for another episode of a Heroes Welcome podcast. I'm your co-host, Maria LaCare Diego, and I'm here with one of my favorite superheroes, my co-host, Liliana.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Joy, and I was like, whatever. Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Liliana Balan, and we are here with Joy. Joy, how do you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
I'm Joey Tapia. Hello.
Hello.
That's me.
Joy, what are your credentials for everyone who's listening?
Yes. I have a PhD in counselor education and supervision. I'm licensed as a professional counselor in Colorado and in Texas, and a supervisor. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor, registered play therapist, and a national certified counselor. And lastly, I'm a certified supervisor and trainer for child-centered play therapy and child-parent relationship therapy.
Look at you. So many initials after your name.
So many.
Got to catch them all, right?
But do they mean anything at the end of the day? I don't know.
They do. You work really hard for them. They can tell us why I want to make sure that you name them. And like, you're so young. I remember when I first met you and I was like, shut up, just shut up. So Joey, what are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to talk about just what I call disability responsive practices in play therapy, in the work we do with children. When we often think about culturally responsive practice, often disability identity is not necessarily always considered. Sometimes it's left out of the discussion. It's often other minoritized identities, and a lot of my work centers around disability responsive ways to better do what we do as clinicians and play therapists and counselors. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Thank you. And thank you for naming that, because we're being very vocal in regards to when we're talking about culture. It's not just ethnicity or race. Like, there's so many groups that come into it. So, and I love that you've been doing specifically this kind of work for 14 years. That's a long time. Still keep thinking of your age. Like, oh my God. And you've been doing this for so long. So tell us, what is something that mental health therapists should pay attention when working with this population? What should they consider or be curious about?
Yeah, there's so many things to consider. One, I think the first thing we need to name is that we live in an ableist society. The world wasn't built for disabled people. And so I should name too, as we talk about this, I'm a non-disabled person doing disability research. And so for me, it's always important to consider, how am I including other disabled voices in the work that I do? The majority of the work that I do is qualitative in nature. And so outside of my clinical work, in terms of research, figuring out what their voice is and what are the actual gaps and needs, so that we get to do what we do better, especially when we say we serve the community. Well, what does it actually mean if our spaces are not accessible, if our playrooms are not accessible, etc.? And so I think one of the first things we should consider is just our own connection to how we make sense of our understanding of disability. Often when we think about it, folks often associate that to be physical, someone with a physical disability. And it goes way beyond that, right? We go beyond into more non-visible disabilities that we may never learn about, or if we do, we may not necessarily know how to navigate in the therapeutic space. And often we have families who may have children that are disabled, and they often don't know how to navigate the space with their own children. So I think that's just an important consideration that we must pay attention to. We can't ignore our own internal biases that we just carry because we live in an ableist society.
Yeah. Wow, that was a lot, right, Maria? I was like, oh my
I
God,
love
it
that.
seems like this is part two after we had Marshall talking about
Yeah.
ableism. But I love that you started with part of my work is doing disability research in regards to how do we provide services? How are we thinking of our spaces? How are we thinking about the playroom, especially when the majority of us think about disability of something that is physical and we don't think about dynamic disability. We don't think
Right.
about those invisible disabilities that show up, and there's no trainings on how to help this population either.
Yeah, yeah, they're very limited, and they're sometimes so focused on a particular area, domain of work. I'm trying to
Mhm.
find the word. What is the word? Discipline. That's it.
Yes.
And so finding ways to bring that into the mental health space, because unfortunately we do contribute to ableist messages that clients receive. And it's unfortunate that we're the ones that are providing a safe place and also the ones that are causing harm.
There you go.
So I'm wondering if you could maybe list out some of those for our listeners who might still this might still be very new to them. Like Liliana and I talk about this quite a bit, and we've had conversations with others, but we also recognize, especially after our talk with Marshall and our keynote, that this is still very much a new concept for a lot of people to view themselves in this way, to acknowledge that we're living in an ableist society and that they have internal ableism. What are some things that just off the top of your head might be of note or consideration for a therapist who's brand new to this information?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to approach it with humility, right? I'm not here to say you're a terrible human for thinking this. It's happened for a reason, right? But being aware of it, now we can do something with it. And so for me, it's important to just I think it starts with the reflective component of, can you just sit with yourself and just think about the ways in which you may perpetuate and or organize your views about disabled people, right? What is that? What comes up for you? What do what messages just seem to be very apparent that may have been taught to you by
Mhm.
others, that may have been shown to you in other ways? Um, and to sit and wrestle with that, right, for a little bit, and just really be able to unpack that as, okay, well, how can I unlearn this and relearn what it means to be more responsive to this community in a way that is not perpetuating. And so some of the ways that I think about that is, when we think about our therapeutic space, we have the privilege to ask questions that most humans don't ask other humans. And so when I'm thinking about working with families, when I'm working with kids and their parents, and I say parents, parents to me is anyone who has authority over the child. And so I'm using it very broadly. Um, when I think about who has authority or who the parents are, and I'm meeting with them, I'm considering how I'm asking questions. You
Mm.
know, sometimes we get very, as humans, we get very curious about someone's abilities rather than leaning into the therapeutic necessity of my questions. So I
Mm.
want to think about, what am I asking clients? What am I asking parents about their child that I wouldn't ask another parent if their child was not disabled? Right? Am I just super curious because I don't know much about that world? I don't know much about this disability, that I'm maybe just overstepping with some of my questions that are more curious in nature than therapeutically necessary. And so I encourage folks to think about that, because that often, again, if parents are actually working super hard to center their child, all their identities they hold, and really advocate for them, the last thing we need to do is show them that another provider is seeing their child in a negative, in a deficit oriented way, and not showing up in a way that's more responsive. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I think it was Dr. Robert Grant, right, who told us most children that come to therapy don't come because of their disability.
Mm.
They come because they need help in other areas. So I love that you're saying, are we asking questions to be curious, and are we focusing on the deficit versus what the family needs from us? And how are we
Right.
learning in order to provide services to this family, especially when in the play therapy world, we tend to say broadly, right? We serve everyone. I'm like, can you really serve everyone? Do you really do trainings on everything? But we have this fantasy that we can, without actually stepping into what you're inviting us to not only talk about, but to be curious about what does that really mean.
Totally. And as you mentioned, that something that was coming up is because we, again, as humans have this, depending on how you're raised in the environment that you emerged in, we may have this tendency to want to do for, right? Those in need or those that need help. Hello, we're all helpers, so we want to help.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes as therapists, we lean a little too hard with specific clients. And so I would encourage you to also consider who are those clients. And if those are disabled kids, why not do that for everybody? Why just them? And so considering the savior complex that we sometimes get into, and instead of taking power from them, how can we empower them and empower families that are going to have to navigate the space every single day outside of their time with you, where we're not taking on more because we feel like we have to, that no one else will if we don't. Instead, having conversations with those that are actually involved with this child, involved with the family to support them long term.
Yeah.
Love that. You're giving an example. Can you give another example of what you mean by like disability responsive practice for mental health?
Yeah.
Conditions?
So it starts with our websites. So it's down to like the basics. When we think about how we organize our professional identities out there, often we all have our cute websites. They have all these features and do all these things, but often they're not accessible. And so there's actual platforms that can scan your websites to see if it's accessible. Often the domain, what is it called? Like Squarespace. Yes, thank you. They often have accessibility checkers that you can activate to see if your website's accessible. Because again, let's say the child's not disabled, the parents might be. And so how are we supporting just everyone getting access? So it starts with the website, and then it also starts with how you list how you describe your space. And so often, especially if you're serving folks on insurance, you get asked on a form, is your space accessible? And you select if it has a ramp, if there's railing, etc. But that's pretty much it. It doesn't ask how many steps are there that they have to navigate. It doesn't ask how big the doorways are. Is furniture movable? Like none of those things are listed. Is lighting adjustable? And so all of that we can list on our website. It can just be like, here's my space, right? Like you see folks with pictures of their playrooms, pictures of their office, arrangement. Well, in addition to that, we can add, here's how wide my doorway is. My lighting is adjustable. My furniture is movable, right? There may be folks who may use some mobility device that may take up space. Power wheelchairs. I work at a hospital right now, working with spinal cord and brain injury patients, and their power wheelchairs are large, larger than manual chairs. And so can we just make sure that when we say we're providing accessible services, and or just services to the community, that we're actually speaking to everyone. Additionally, when we think about our just decor, we love cute stuff. We love the cute stuff. And is it too much stuff?
Yeah.
Is it sensory overload? Right? So am I able to adjust my space? Even though it's for us, ultimately we're there creating and holding the space for clients. And so if I need to move things around or remove things, I'll do that. Why not? If it's going to get in the way of therapeutic work, let's prevent that from happening. Additionally, when it comes to the playroom, it depends on the communities that you're serving. When I think about, I work with the deaf and hard of hearing community. And so when I look at the toys that I have, I'm looking at how can I get other things besides cell phones? Can I get dolls with hearing aids? Can I get just fake hearing aids? toys, miniatures that are representative of other disabled people, ensuring that I have access to those. Ensuring that some of my puppets, when we think about just some of the toys that we utilize, that we have actual finger manipulation puppets. Sometimes we have to make those or modify them or attach Velcro to a glove that attaches to the puppet so that they can still use the puppet in play, but and use it in communicating in their natural language. And so those are a few things, right? And so I'm going to jump back to the website stuff. So when I think about my images too, I'm going to include an alt text description of my space. For those of you who don't know what that is, it is a description of the image. It is for folks who may have low vision or blindness that may need that are trying to assess your services. Yeah. It gives them a sense of what images you're providing.
Wow. Wow. I mean, honestly, I didn't even think of some of the stuff that you're mentioning right now. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to have to go check my website and my room again.
Well, I think it's a constant state of mind, right? It's a constant assessment that we'll need to go through, right? So, because it's a big deal to like put a website together and get it up, right? And then the next step is like making sure it's accessible for the wide variety, and you're right, Joey, when we talk about accessibility, if you're paneling with insurance, it's all ADA physical disability adjustments and accommodations that they screen for. There isn't really anything, I think one of mine was like, do you have the ability for translators? But like that's still as far as it goes. And we, Liliana and I continue to have these discussions to push out there that there's more disabilities to consider other than what you can physically see. And it's so important, but there isn't like a checklist for us right now that I'm aware of like, here are other considerations, unless you have something like that.
I do. I can share that. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I think that's really helpful. I don't, I want to hold grace that our community isn't doing this intentionally. And
100%.
if we can provide that information, then there is no excuse for us to make these accommodations.
Absolutely. Because the thing about accommodations, it can be for everybody. It doesn't have to be for a selected few. It's truly for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can share that.
Even that, right? Like, I love that you're mentioning that, because I think I mentioned that I went to a conference and everyone was fighting to plug in their computer while I was fighting to plug in my oxygen machine. And people are like, but I have to plug in because it's like things that we don't think about. And as you were saying that, I was like, oh yeah. If someone comes in with an oxygen machine or they need to hook up, anything that they need, is that accessible to them, and how I'm making that available so that they know that, versus again, most of the things that we're mentioning right now are because insurance are making unaware, but not because we're having trainings about it.
Totally.
Which I'm like, are you doing trainings, Joy, about this?
I did a talk yesterday on CPRT with families, like deaf children with hearing parents. So in certain sectors, yes, like focused groups.
Okay. Well, I would imagine we couldn't like a broad overview. Even that would be like several days long potentially if you were trying to hit every possible need, right? Like that's a lot.
And something I'm doing now is I'm currently doing a research study where I'm gathering qualitative data from disabled folks who have engaged in mental health services, specifically individual, family, and relationship therapy, to just get a sense of what their experience was like with a clinician. And because I want to figure, because again, we have these ways in which we can be more responsive, and what are the other components that are occurring in which we might be perpetuating harmful messages or just negatively impacting the therapeutic experience. So hopefully the more comes out with that, and then something more formalized can be put together. But I know there's like the association, it's just hard too, because we're so scattered association wise. Like I'm in the play therapy world, I'm in the emotionally focused therapy world, I'm in the counselor education world. Too many worlds. I don't want to go to all of them. And so I think the information gets so siloed into a specific group and
Yeah.
or specific association, and then it doesn't really get to everybody. And then we get this like, I didn't know this existed. Well, of course you didn't. How would you? You're not part of that group. And
Yeah.
so I think too we struggle as a field to
Yeah.
really be collaborate or to really be, I don't know what the word is. Do you
We
know
do
the word?
struggle to collaborate with other
Yeah.
associations because we
Well,
don't
Even
that
just
too.
sharing, even just sharing resources and information. We had the same conversation when we talked with Jessica, the who's a certified sex therapist. Like they get access to information that the rest of the general therapist population doesn't. But
Correct.
it's impactful and is helpful to have. Not to say, we can't know it all and we can't learn it all, but I think there are big pieces that are across the board helpful for us to be able to share and disseminate all that information. And you're absolutely right, Joey. There's so many blocks and barriers for that, which we're finding them. We're having to repeat stuff that's already been done. We just need to share that information.
Totally. Share it, make it accessible, make it available to anyone who would want it.
Mhm.
And
Mm,
so it's nice that you all do this, right? Gathering people to share and speak, because this is just another way to reach people.
yeah. Aw. Like, oh, yeah. So I was trying to remember your website because I was like, wait, so are you like promoting the presentations that you're doing so that we can like stock?
Probably not.
Speaking about
Probably not.
accessibility, Joey.
I don't spend too much time on there. I should, right? I should be putting that on there. But I would say the Center for Play Therapy put that out, and so they were advertising it and whatnot. Um, but yes, yes, yes.
You see, but how will we know? We need like a central, like your website will be great. I'm just advocating that your website will be great for us to go see it so that we can follow you and take those trainings because I need it. I'm sure Maria will agree. Like we need
Absolutely.
it.
Well, I appreciate that. I will share that. I will share that.
We just want you to be accessible, Joey, to all of our
Thank. Happy
listeners.
to. Happy to help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to thank you because I mean, you did share that you're a non-disabled individual researching this. And as a disabled individual myself, I really appreciate that because those of us that are providers or maybe potentially in those positions, we don't we don't have the energy all of the time or the physical capability to do this important research. So I just wanted to say thank you for that because I know there can be some murky waters of an able-bodied person being able to do
Yeah.
advocacy for those that are disabled. But I think it's also really important to acknowledge that those of us living with disabilities, we don't have the capacity to do some of this stuff. And it's really, really wonderful to have someone as an advocate like yourself lighting the fire for us and starting
Yeah.
the path.
Well,
No, I know. Well, and the thing is, the path has been there for so long, right? It's just how can we just make it wider for folks to be able to just get what they need? And so I think about the space. I just think I love therapy so much, and I'm as an educator and training master students to become therapists. It just feels like there's just an opportunity to really make space for the things that just get lost, right? We get lost in the curriculum we have to teach and or the standards that we have to teach, and we often forget the actual human experiences that are we're going to be engaging in therapy. And I just, as a rehabilitation counselor, just hearing stories and stories over time, it just became clear that as much as we operate from a social model of disability, where the environment is disabling and not the individual, we still perpetuate the medical model all the time.
yeah.
And again, I part of my dissertation was it was with EFT therapists, supervisors, and certified EFT supervisors and or therapists working with interabled relationships where one partner's disabled and the other partner's non-disabled. And the majority of participants were coming from a deficit-oriented lens, and they weren't intending to. These are, the well-intended humans that are doing the work, trying to help everyone heal and bond, etc. And yet, this was just not being addressed, and it was cross different professions. It was not just clinical mental health. It was social work. It was marriage and family. It was psychology, and so it just seems clear that we can do better. For obviously so many groups that we want to serve, and so many intersections within that. Um, that we can just really just be intentional and humble with the process rather than feel like it's too overwhelming. It's like we're gonna make mistakes. It's
Yeah.
just chill out and acknowledge you made a mistake, right? It's like sit with that. Get your egos aside.
Yeah.
You're a human wanting to help humans. Let's lean into that.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's go back to that,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's go back to that. There are so many standards, and the more letters you add behind your name, the more, organizations and standards you get added to. And but yeah, I mean, we're helpers, and we hold the grace that we're doing the best we can with what we know, while being pushed to like know better, learn more, right? Make
mhm.
the changes that you can as you can make them, and keep moving in that way. But remembering that we're humans helping humans, we're all messy in this. But I think
Yeah,
if the intent is there, right, and the drive to learn and to try and to do better is really important.
Beautiful.
absolutely.
Oh God, like too many places to go. By the way, for everyone who's listening, this is Joy all the time. When I'm talking to him, he's like, chill. Like he takes me back, like breathe, like just chill. Let's come back. And he has this ability for you to pause. First, I start laughing. Because it's like, oh, that's right, let me chill. And then two, but this ability to bring things into focus. One, we are perfectly imperfect. And
Mhm.
he's always a reminder, like, chill, like we got this. We can go. And what is it that they don't know? What is it that I don't know? So he has this humanness that brings everywhere he goes. So if you have the opportunity to learn from him, please, 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 like take advantage of it, because he always makes time for everyone. He will always answer questions, but he has this ability to bring the human within. So I will always love you for that. And I hope you know that.
Appreciate it.
And then two, our field does have the savior complex. So then there's a lot of pressure for us to be professional and be perfect all the time. And that we deserve better than that message. And we need to let go of that ego. We're not here to say that I know better than you. We're here to say, how can I be a service for you? And in that, there's a humility that comes to it, because then we get to be curious. We go and learn from the client who's in front of us, and then see what is it that I can have around me to facilitate this process for you. And that's the beautiful invitation that you're doing for us as you're talking today, Joy, and which I think is a gift for everyone.
That's lovely. Thank you.
I think it's really important. This isn't being taught in schools, right? It's not being taught in programming. Even in our professional organizations, this isn't as loud as a conversation as I think it needs to be, and is only going to increase, right? Like the acknowledgement and awareness of disabilities is only going to continue to grow as we move away from the ableist society that we are living in right now, right? So I think this is
Yeah,
just a growing area of information and responsibility for clinicians to just become more and more aware of, and take those steps that they can, whether it's reviewing their website, whether it's reviewing their space, whether you've given some really lovely starting points, for clinicians to give some consideration beyond the 3 check boxes for ADA compliance.
right. Absolutely. Um, you mentioned something and something came up. What was it? It'll come back. But yeah, it's we have an important role, right? In how we market ourselves, advertise ourselves, connect with the community matters, down to our paperwork. And so when we think about just reading level, some of our language is sometimes a little too jargony for no reason. I don't care what your credentials are. You don't need to, like, if you feel you need to portray yourself as super intelligent. Well, some folks don't understand the questions you're asking. So
Mhm.
can you just like, chill out, right? Can you bring your reading level to fourth grade reading level, 4 to 6th grade? I work with the deaf community. A large percentage statistically can only read at the fourth grade reading level. And so I need to make sure my paperwork at the group practice that I'm at is can be under, not only for them, but if I'm working with individuals with developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, I need to be mindful of those components as well. And
Yeah.
so keep it in mind that while we have some language that is necessary for legal reasons, right? For the procedures that we put in place, etc. There's a lot that in which how we describe ourselves and all our practice and the information that we can modify.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, I love
yeah, and the format of how that's delivered too can be a little more flexible. Sometimes we get stuck with our EHR systems and we're just like, well, it's electronic. Well, actually, some people may need it in paper form. And so can we just have it on the ready if a client asks to be able to just send it?
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
No, beautiful. And so let me go back because I'm having this debate with myself. No, that's not true. I have it with everyone. But in regards, so there is a difference between clinical language and client language, right?
Hmm.
I'm even having this debate in the bilingual spaces that we are, because now it's very popular to sell you conferences in Spanish. And I'm like, you're still missing the fucking point. That's clinical. That doesn't help you with the language that you need for your clients. So this is where we move into spaces without actually thinking of the population that we want to serve. So thank you for naming that, because I was like, am I the only one? I cannot be the problem with this. I can see it. Can anyone else see it? So thank you for joining me here.
You're welcome.
People can see our faces this morning versus just listening to the audio. I'm just loving you today. Um, eh, um, Anything else that you want our listeners to know regarding how to be accessible, how to have a responsive practice, and let go of their fucking savior complex?
I think there's, for those that like to read, there's a book. It's very easy to read, and it's more of a framework. It's a book called Disability Affirmative Therapy, and it's by Rhonda Olkin. She's a rehabilitation psychologist. She was out of California. She may still be there. Dr. Rhonda Olkin. This book came out a few years ago in 2017, and it provides a nice model of just like ways to engage with this,
Okay.
ways to engage with this work and be more affirming. Right, because if we say we're an affirming therapist, right? I affirm all these different groups. Well, how? Show me, right? Do some work. Um, and then we also have disability related counseling competencies. Those can be found through the American Rehabilitation Counseling Association. Those are also great as well. We have the multicultural and social justice counseling competencies out of the American Counseling Association. I'm speaking from the counseling side, obviously, because that's my world, but there are probably others out there because we don't communicate or collaborate
Right.
across associations. So know that that is available to you as well. And it provides this nice way of just looking at the privilege that we hold and the power we hold as a clinician, and then how those dynamics play out as a either disabled practitioner and or non-disabled practitioner, and being able to engage with those spaces with a little more thought and exploration.
Nice. I would like to say thank you, as Maria pointed out, because it is exhausting when we are disabled entities and we're only called when we want to be used as tokens.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. And then we're being rejected after it because we're asking too much. So having someone like you advocating for this is refreshing and it gives us hope.
I'm
Absolutely.
glad.
Yeah. Thank you for doing what you're doing. It's so important. It's so important. And I'm really appreciative that you're willing to come on today and like chat with us about it. because these conversations need to be louder. There needs to be more emphasis and influence behind them than what we've got right now.
Yeah, I agree.
The man of so many words this morning. Thank you, Joey. We will include your website. Anything else that you want us to include on today's podcast?
I will share those links for the competencies. I think those are just great. And then the book is just another great one. And then for those of you who obviously love reading and want to do more, I always lean into, if I'm going to read something about a particular group, I'm going to read it from their voices. And so being mindful that there are amazing disabled authors out there that provide a lot of great resources and information. So to not forget that.
No. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being you. You're such a beautiful human.
Thanks.
I get to hang and I get to have access to you. But I hope that everyone who's listening, please reach out. Pay for consultation when you reach out to him, and ask questions. Please ask questions if you truly want to have a responsive practice. Do consultations. That is the best way. And Joy is here to provide that service for all of you who are listening.
Absolutely.
Joey, it was such a delight to meet you. Thank you so much
Same
for
here.
being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Until next time.
Bye.